Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to cover the Dark Archer. Spoiler, it's really fucking good. Now, if you don't know what the Dark Archer is, you've probably heard of the Arcane Archer, which is a mounted mage and a mounted archer in one, a dedicated mounted build. This is the next iteration of that. This is version 3.0 or whatever, however you want to describe it, but this is, in my opinion, the best mounted build in the game. And this is the most fuck you, I want to win no matter what build. And I've got quite a few friends that I've played a lot with that play these builds, and I gotta say guys, this is one of the most oppressive, busted builds in the game. I've put off making this build guide for a long time because of how powerful these builds are and how frustrating they are to play against, because there's very few things out there that can take you out, right? So if you're new to this channel, I have two different types of build guides that I've been building recently. I've got veteran build guides and I have beginner build guides. This is definitely a veteran build guide. This is not easy or cheap to get into, but once you have it established, it is extremely powerful. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the entire build, how it plays, the nuances behind it. I do have a Dark Archer myself. I have played the build a decent amount. I have a lot of friends who have played it a decent amount, so I've been exposed to it quite a bit. I'm going to talk about the indirect nerfs and buffs that it's received throughout the course of the last year or so. And at the end, I'm going to go through a tier list, and I'm going to talk about every little detail about it. So typically these videos go a little bit long, but I hope that if you find value in this, shoot it a thumbs up, give it a like. Super chats are always appreciated. And before I get started, I just want to shout out the website. If you're new to Mortal Online and you're looking for a toolbox, this is a great website. If you're looking for a guild, you can filter by type, you can filter by language, find a guild that suits you, and if you ever want your guild listed, all you gotta do is click this red button here. Okay, intro out of the way. Let's get started. I'm gonna relax a little bit, talk about the build, and go through this. So, the Dark Archer is a full Sardukan, age 42, min height, stout build. It seems really weird. This build is 100% min-maxed for being a mounted character and nothing more, right? You'll see that as I talk about the action skills. If you look over at the armor, you'll notice the armor is actually really light. You could also run an even lighter set than this and toggle a tower shield on and off in case you're playing as a mounted mage in the moment and need cover from another archer that's shooting at you. This build has insane mana regeneration. It has insane stat lines. If you look, I've got 82 strength, 45 dex, 100 con, 108 intellect, because it actually has 100 intellect, but I have 2 plus 4 raw intellect rings on the build here, and then 100 psych as well. You don't even need the war cries, so you're able to get into certain benefits of human, like going down the profession tree and getting artisan, getting the lore bonuses, getting the temperature and the hot and cold bonuses here for protection, getting the merchant 5% off, but you can actually have this build up and running around level 14 and consider it full build. Everything else after that point is kind of, icing on the cake. Let's talk about the action skills. What this is designed for is it's designed for mounted archery, mounted magery. You've got both skills completely maxed out. You're a full mounted mage. You have 62 ecumenical for all the ecumenical spells that you want to cast from horseback. You also have aiming technique at 72 to help reduce the bounce on your horse. Vitalism is maxed out. You'll notice that sprinting is at 50 and armor training is also at 50. The idea here is to wear enough armor that you don't just get railed off your horse or off your bear or off your mulva, because people will, a good player might shoot your bear or your horse a couple times with an arrow, realize they're doing almost no damage to your pet, and then try to focus you. You need to have some armor to mitigate that, but what I would suggest is make this armor look beefier than it is, right? Make this, wear panzer scale and plate scales and stuff like that on the biggest pieces to make yourself look more intimidating, but it is a very light set. The set weighs like 7 or 8 kgs, and you still have about 70% mana regeneration, which is pretty nuts when you consider this build has 214 mana, 185 health, Pretty low on stamina, but who cares? You're mounted the whole time. Melee damage bonus doesn't matter. You're never going to be on foot. Combat speed, again, doesn't matter. You're never on foot. Free armor weight is 9.47. I think this loadout right here is like 9.3. Yeah, so I misspoke earlier. It's 9.3. When you're building your stats, or when you're looking for trinkets, the most important thing by far is pierce damage, because the bulk of your damage is going to be coming from your bow. It's either your pet, your greater walkers, or your bow. Often you're not doing much else in the way of damage. EQ damage is also pretty good if you want to play the more mounted mage side of things. Being able to T-lash from horseback is okay. It's not like the best thing ever. What a lot of people like to do is they like to foam as their opener, which is a decent tactic. Say you see an opponent, they don't know you're there yet, you put a foam in the pocket, put that on their horse. You might take them an extra second to react because it doesn't put anything in their combat log. Gives you time to pull your bow out, start pumping damage, and then you get this really big burst window, which is nice. But the main reason we want EQ damage here is it also applies to your healing. So you can heal more, your throughput on your horse or your bear or whatever you're riding is higher, so you can sustain multiple mounted archers trying to kill you at the same time. Also, blunt protection will help just stop you from getting dismounted. It has full balance. Balance is kind of hard to level. Your book only takes you to 70. You need to be on your horse and have somebody hitting you with a melee weapon. There's a whole process to leveling balance. It's kind of a pain in the dick, but eventually you want to get your balance to level 100. That's going to really, really make it so that unless you get hit by a lance for like 90 damage, you're not getting knocked off your horse. It's extremely hard for you to go off your horse. The only other way that people are actually going to for sure get you off your horse is with Earthquake. And it's really not that hard to play around Earthquake if you're somewhat competent. Necro is at 100. Necro's at 100 for a couple reasons. The biggest reason being Ritualism is at 100. And if you're new to Ritualism, there's a couple different guides out there. I sell a spreadsheet that, has all of the different creatures, their costs, and how to build them and stuff. But what you need to know is Ritualism. The higher the skill, the more health your pet has. And that's kind of the only stat we really care about when we're talking about a mount. So Ritualism is probably pound for pound the best 100 primary action skills in the game. And when I was talking earlier about indirect nerfs, when they added all of those guard towers with the elite Tindremic guards that are supposed to, I confirmed with Henrik, are not supposed to be elite. They're supposed to be normal guards. Those elite guards just like two-shot you, your horse, your pet, everything, and just immediately remove you from existence. So this build got a lot more restricted in where it can actually go. You'll see this build a lot when you're fighting over troll spawns, or you're down in the jungle, or you're all the way up in GK, and these builds can kind of roam around without the fear of bumping into these obnoxious towers that they added to the game. Henrik, if you watch my videos, or people that do watch my videos, just please at Henrik and be like, please remove these fucking towers. Like, these towers, I understand right on the outskirt of town having normal guards, but there's, in the middle of the Red Forest, there's like guard towers with these elite Tindremic guards that just tear your butthole open every time you walk by them, and it's really, really frustrating. And Ritualism is really, really restricted because of that. One suggestion, just going off on a little tangent here about Ritualism, that I would really like to see is I would like to see Ritualism allowed in Curite towns. I talked with Matt, the guy who wrote the lore of the game, and he told me that in Curite culture, necromancy and Ritualism actually isn't frowned upon. It's actually something that is seen as a tool. You're bringing the dead back to life as a tool. You're getting value from the dead. It's a way to honor the dead. You're still seeing value from them. It's kind of weird, but that's what Matt's told me about the Curite culture. In Tindremic culture, it's still kind of frowned upon. It's, the dead is sacred. In Curite, it's a lot more normalized. It would be really cool if your pets were allowed in Curite towns. It would really just make Ritualism a little bit more tenable, and it makes sense because the Necro Dungeon is all the way on the east side of the map. It's all the way deep in Curite territory, right? So that would be kind of cool. I would really like to see that. When we're looking at professions, it does have a lot of profession skills because you're able to get that artisan stack and all those extra points from that. I would suggest making yourself as self-sufficient as possible on this build. This build is the type of build you go when you never want to go back to town. You're able to harvest and stack up all of your own carcass. You might use this build to farm trolls, and troll carcass is some of the best carcass you can use for ritualism. So you want to be able to make your own bows, you want to be able to make your own horse armor, you want to be able to make medium to light armor, you want to be able to make meta stuff. So it used to be flakestone silk was like the meta horse armor, and honestly, I haven't had too much time to test the new changes to horses. Now, third gear keeps your stamina full, and fourth gear is when you burn it. Horses are probably still really, really viable on this. Black bears would be another one that you might want to look at. So, ritualism, you can have a Mulva as an attack pet. You might want to be able to just ride a max level Mulva, put some steel on it, stack it up with some really good gems and carcass. You also could ride a ritualism black bear, white bear, even a brown bear. Black bear is probably going to be the best. Slap some really heavy armor on it and just go to town. If you have an undead horse, you can also have a undead tar dog. Tar dogs are kind of the meta ritualism pet right now. They're small, they're fast, and because, like I said, an indirect buff, this last patch they added bear armor, which also applies to tar dogs because they're in the bear family. You can see this photo here that I took. You can put armor on tar dogs now, and you'll see a lot of these dark archers out there running a tar dog, and because it's fast, it's kind of like a glass cannon bear, and now we get to put armor on it. So you become even harder to kill. So becoming self-sufficient so that you can be out on the fringes of society, like kind of how the lore would imply. You're a necromancer, a mounted necromancer. It is such a cool aesthetic for a build. Like from a lore perspective, this build, it's just fucking cool, man. Like you are a horseman of the apocalypse. That's kind of how I view it. You're a horseman of the apocalypse. And living out there, there's a whole bunch of different benefits. Main thing is you get to kill people like crazy. The other thing that I haven't really talked about too much is how much mana you have and how good your mana regeneration is. It is going to be extremely hard for you to actually run out of mana on this build because you can go in between your bow and casting with relative ease. Now it's very easy to swap your bow and your tower shield with just a single press of a button for that hot swap. So mana is nuts, and you can actually have 6, 7, 8 Greater Walkers out at the same time. So the goal for you, one way that you'll be able to secure a lot of different fights and a really good rotation, is to have the discipline to dismount the enemy fighter or dismount some guys on the enemy team. Let's say it's a 1v5. This build is extremely good at 1vx. So let's say you're fighting like 3, 4, or even 5 guys, and you start to dismount them. Your goal should be to string the fight out. And once you dismount somebody and you knock them off your horse, your goal should be reposition. Go to a different location, drag the fight away from that one guy that's on foot now, then dismount another one. While you're repositioning, top yourself back up and reset the fight. Dismount the next one, repeat the process. Dismount the next one, repeat the process. You could do this for up to a lot of different people, unless you're fighting other dedicated mounted builds, other dedicated arcane archers that are actually really good. And at this point, if you're a dedicated arcane archer and you haven't kind of ascended into the dark archer path, you're kind of behind the curve. But let's say you're stringing these guys out and you reset fights. Let's say everybody is now dismounted on the enemy team. You've now reset, you're still mounted. Generally, if your mount dies, you're dead on this build. So let's say you've successfully dismounted all the enemy team. Start making Greater Walkers. You make 6, 7, 8 Greater Walkers. You put them on a target. Your mana regeneration is still going to be coming in. Then you put your Tar Dog on them. Then you start pelting them with arrows. It's extremely oppressive. Such a good gameplay style. For me, I don't play this build very often because it's not that fun for me to play a mounted build. I like being on foot. I like the faster cast speed. I like kiting. I like parrying. I like all of that type of play style. If you play this build prioritizes winning over everything. If I was going to pick a build that was like the best at just winning every single fight it encounters, it would probably be this one. So let's talk about tier list. I'm kind of already going into the tier list without actually opening the page. Let's talk about PvE. This build is like really good for PvE. You can do almost all the trolls in the game depending on what kind of pet you bring out there, you can, as a mounted archer, you're able to clear most of the different mobs and melee mobs in the game. Your tar dog pumps crazy damage. Now it has armor. You have benumb mind, so you can silence casters, and you can basically do everything. The only thing you're not really doing is you're not going into dungeons. So I guess, maybe I'll bump it down a tier because you can't really go into dungeons. You could. You're going to be walking extremely slow, and everybody's going to hate you if you go into a dungeon. I just wouldn't do it. So I'll bump it down one peg, because overall, I'm looking at this build overall for the entire game. And if you do run this build, realize this is an open world build. This is meant to be outside. You're almost never going to be going into a dungeon with this. So something to keep in mind. They're about to add the second character slot for characters, and if it was me and I only had one account, I might want to have a dedicated footy and a dedicated mounted guy. I mean, if I wanted to transport items across the world, this would be the build that, well, I'd probably be an arcane archer so I can go into town, but if I was escorting my buddy, I would want to be on this build. I'd get him to the edge of town and be like, there's the guards, bro, go into town. Right? Solo play, it's fucking S tier. It's just so insanely good. 1v1 and dueling. 1v1ing is 1v1 to the death against all the other builds in the game, and dueling is like in-town dueling. Like, you literally can't even do that. You can't go into town, you can't duel, you can't have an honorable melee fight. It just doesn't exist, so it's F tier. 1v1 though, like fighting to the death against any other build in the game. If you're playing this right, and you're in the open world, and you're on your mount, which I can't imagine why you wouldn't be, there's really nothing that beats this. I've got a lot of friends that play this, and I've tried to think about, like, if I wanted to kill them, how would I do that? If I wanted to deal with Dark Archers, because I figured that, especially when this build goes live, this is going to become even more and more meta. How would I deal with it? And, the Apex build would probably be the best thing for it, where you run a naked jungle horse, you fourth gear into the Dark Archer and earthquake him off his mount, and then try to kill him before he gets back on his mount. That's the only real way that I can think that you kill a Dark Archer. They're going to be able to gap close you, they're going to be able to dismount you, you're going to have to fight a beefy pet that now has armor, that is faster than you, and potentially greater walkers at the same time, while a guy is healing his pet or pelting you with arrows or T-lashing you. Like, they have so many different ways to kill you based on the situation, and a really good Dark Archer knows what they should be doing at that time. So it takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of game sense, a little bit of game knowledge to figure out how to do that, but it is insane. Again, this is S tier for 1vx, probably the best 1vx build in the game by quite a big margin. It is insanely good at 1vx. Offense, put it in A tier. I mean, arrows don't do particularly high damage. Individual magic casts, especially mounted mages that have longer cast times, the throughput is generally lower. Your tar dog does pump damage. If you had like 8 greater walkers on somebody, that's going to pump damage. But that damage is somewhat mitigatable, especially if you're a mage. You can atrophy the pet and potentially death hand it and go through the damage that way. Or if you're a Thursar, you could lifesteal through the pet. But generally, they have pretty good offensive capability. I wouldn't say it's S tier. It's not like a fat mage with super high intellect or a Thursar with max damage bonus. It's not any of that. Defense, I'll put this in S tier. Like I was just talking about, I've been theory crafting and thinking about, like, how would I kill this? Like, how would I deal with a Dark Archer? The only real answer is earthquaking them or being a Dark Archer yourself. You have to out-mounted archer them as a Dark Archer. That's the only real way that I can think to beat this build. Is you can't beat them, join them type of scenario. The defense on this is super good. It is insanely hard to knock these guys out. The other thing is undead mounts, undead horses have better stam usage than every other horse in the game, than the living horses. So if somebody is now fourth gearing to try and catch you, you can 4th gear away and you will have more stamina than they do. And that is so powerful. Now, if they're a Beastmaster, it's kind of a dice roll. Because with the Beastmaster now, you can activate that ability. You can activate Spur On to get your extra 200 stamina. Maybe that is kind of an indirect nerf to Dark Archer, but just the raw stamina consumption being lower, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Team fights. If you're in the open world, I'm basically assuming that you're in the open world with this build, because why wouldn't you be? Insanely good. Like, I've played a decent amount with these guys on my team. I've played a little bit as these guys. And, I've got clips where me and some of the Black Priest guys from back in the day go like 2v7, 2v8. And another really, really good pet that I haven't talked about is the Lynx. So it's not listed here, but the Lynx is insanely powerful. You can't put armor on it now, so I'd still say the Tar Dog is better. But the Lynx is extremely tiny, it's extremely fast, and you can put really good cargs in it to give it good health, and it does okay damage. So it's really easy to put it in and pull it out of danger as soon as it starts to get focused, especially if you mix in like walkers with it. And then the other thing that people don't think about is blowing up the walkers. Like, this build, it really suffocates the opponent from an action economy standpoint. This build is got multiple pets, like a small army going towards them. This is kind of the mounted version of the raid boss. You have a small army attacking your target, including yourself, and they have to, what do? They have to choose, do I kite? Do I heal? Do I try to kill these things? And it's just suffocation for them. So, yeah. Don't really know where I was going with that, other than that's how it feels when you're fighting this. It's fucking suffocating. Money. Like, how expensive is the kit, and how easy is it to make money with this build? This is F tier. I mean, it's really good at PvE. Like, you can do trolls to make money, but this build is probably the highest cost, like barrier to entry, other than maybe raid boss. You have to have basically a full lexicon with necromancy. Greater Walker is extremely expensive as a spell right now. There's a lot of different spells that are expensive, so getting a full spell book is a challenge within itself. It's a huge front end cost. Then you have to be able to AFK boost your pets, have all the carcass that you need localized in an area. The setup time for this build, to get this build rolling, is a lot. It takes a lot of time investment, a lot of logistic efforts and practice and patience to get everything organized, and then you have to level the pets. So one big downside, we'll talk a little bit about uptime here for a second. This build is getting value from almost everything in its kit. So if you were thinking about just like in the moment, in the fight, this build is B tier for uptime, because you're not getting value from your mage side when you're using your bow, and you're not getting value from your vice versa when you're using the other one, right? So the downside, though, why I'm going to bump this all the way down here, is the amount of time that it takes to get this build functional, to get your pets leveled up to 125, is a very long time. So unless you have a big stockpile of these pets already prepped, which takes days, if not weeks, to get that all sorted, when your pet dies, you're more or less done playing. If your mount dies, you're kind of retired. So that's why this build really has to be min-maxed and really focuses on winning every single fight, because you can't just be the type of player that puts your pet in, torpedoes, kills a target, suicides his horse, and blows him up with a death hand at the last second and consider that a W. If your pets die, either pet, it's extremely expensive and time consuming for you, and your build loses a lot of its potential, a lot of its killing potential. So the only real wins here are when you kill somebody and you lose nothing. So that's what part of the reason it's so suffocating is, if you are fighting this, they are 100% in it to kill you, and they are going to try and do their absolute best to not lose a damn thing. So when you lose to these builds, it feels real bad, man. You just get chomped on. Utility, I'll put it in A tier because it is a full mage. It has well, except for Earthquake, it has full ecumenical, it has full necromancy. You're a mounted build, so you have your really good utility in the outside world. You have a pet, you can do greater walkers, you have a ton of mana. The downside is you can't go into dungeons, so I can't really make it like S tier, like you can do everything. So that's one thing that it kind of struggles on. You're not going into a dungeon. Skill cap, I'll put it in A tier. Okay, so let me think about this. So skill cap, S would be super easy to play and get value from. F tier would be extremely hard to play, hard to get value from. I would say that this build is somewhat easy to play. Being a mounted character is somewhat easy to, like, the rotation, getting into it. A lot of people gravitate towards this when they don't want to get good at melee, or maybe they are geographically inclined. Let's say you live in North America or you live in Australia and you really don't like fighting melee because of the penalties that you get from ping. A lot of people might gravitate towards this build. So it's not that hard to learn, I'll be honest. It's actually kind of easy. But the skill cap comes from knowing when to do what, knowing when to leave a fight, having the discipline to kite a fight out once you dismount somebody, leaving that guy in the dust and dragging his buddies away, knowing when to pull your pet out, knowing when you should be in cover resetting, knowing when you should be making greater walkers. All of that stuff is something that will have a lot of trial and error, and when you have these pets that take a long time to make, that is going to be frustrating for you when you're learning how to do this. Crafting. Let's see, crafting would be, I'd say it's like B tier. I mean, you have artisan, you have all of those perks that go along with being a human. So the downside though is because you're living on the fringes of the world and you're generally not going to be inside town with this build, it's you're kind of pigeonholed into making yourself productive for your own build. Like, you're not going to be doing scribing, you're not going to be doing alchemy. You have to use and make your own equipment, so you basically dedicate all of your points to that. And even without the profession skills, without the artisan clade, you're still going to be behind the curve until you unlock all that. Fun, this is really subjective, guys. It's opinion based, obviously. This whole video is, but fun. The reason I don't play this build too much is because it's not fun to me. Like, I enjoy the risk of potentially losing fights, which sounds weird, but I really like playing on foot. I think that foot gameplay is really fun. I mean, I play an obese fat mage with no mounted skills that plays on the front line. Like, I like playing that type of playstyle. So this mounted playstyle is not the best. It's also going to not really excel in traveling the world and joining up with those mega fights. So if I like the mega fights because I find them cool. They're rare. They feel organic in this game. When you get the fights of like 200, 300, 400 people in a small area, that stuff is really cool to me. If you don't like that type of stuff, this build might be more appealing to you, because you're not really able to cross the world right now with all these stupid guard towers cutting you off from the world. I also personally really like going into dungeons. So I have one of these builds. I don't play it very frequently because I don't find it fun. So I'll rate it lower on the fun tier. You might be the opposite. You might be the person that absolutely loves this build. I know several people that are like that. So don't take my word as gospel. If you listen to the rest of the video, if it sounds appealing to you, go for it. PvP, this is absolute S tier. Like, this is, like I said before, this is like the fuck you, I want to win no matter what build. And overall, you can probably surmise by looking at the screen, this is an S tier build. This is the pinnacle, best open world build, period. No question. There's nothing that can compete with it right now. The Bear Lancer might give it a run for its money. Maybe the meta evolves and the Bear Lancer becomes more and more of a thing and you're able to dismount these guys and crush them. I don't have enough room here for all this shit in S tier, boys. I'm just trying to make this organized for you so we can screenshot it at the end and share it. But anyways, thank you so much for all the new members on the channel. You guys will get access to this video early, so If you're not a member, you can join right next to the subscribe button. You get access to these videos, sometimes up to a week early, so you can get in, start making, like this character is a great example of a character that you'd want to start making now. You want to go out and get that carcass sorted. You want to get all this stuff sorted out. And if you do it before the bulk of the other people, you kind of have a leg up. You can get things cheaper. You can get ritualism books cheaper. You can get all that stuff cheaper. So there is some benefit there, guys. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Stick around for whatever meme I'm going to put at the end of this video. Have a good one, guys.
Just watch yourselves. I'm going to clear this guy's bag and we'll keep moving.
EQ another.
Have a weapon.
Good. EQ.
Oh my god.
He's permanent.
That was actually...
Dude just bodied.
Okay, I'll just stand here and bait, I guess.
Come on, Mick.
You can move around. Open door. Do I want to petri the guy with the shield, probably?
I freeze him. I'm freezing him. You ready? Freezing him. Right now, freezing.
Can't petri.
Under.
Stay here.